Hello everybody and welcome to episode 4 of Setting the Scene, part of the Corona Chronicles. Really great to have you back. Hopefully you've enjoyed the previous shows, which we've looked at building a small slither of the battlefield which plays a much larger part in our games. What we're going to do today is I am going to build you a scene that will allow us to look at tanks firing in Firefight, and then in Back to School we're going to talk about cover saves for tanks in the game. But before we get on to that, we've obviously got to build a board. Now someone has asked me, I think it was through the website, I've asked for like a snow tundra. I think the person said that they've got a Space Wolf army, and they wanted to explore options for creating Fenris, or an ice world planet in which you'd find the Velka, Fenrika, or Space Wolves. So that's not a problem, and we've done loads of snowboards in the past on the channel, so if you haven't seen those, whiz back to the Facebook page and have a quick look at those. I think we did one for Adeptus Titanicus, and then a couple, I think we've done about 4 or 5 for 30k, so they're really, really simple, which I'm going to show you how to do right now. So in this scene, we're gonna look at a Imperial Fists Sicaran Venator, painted by Dan Porter. Thank you very much, and against a super heavy Falchion. So I don't see many Falchions around, but they're a pretty cool tank. So we're going to look at how such a small tank can mitigate the damage coming out from the Falchion. I think you probably know where I'm heading with that, but we're going to set up a scene and that'll allow us to explore other options as we go along. Anyway, first things first, the board is different. I had a 2x2 board before in the previous Setting the Scenes. This one is a 12 inches by 36 inches. I'll double check my measurements. 36 inches, yes, so it's 1 foot by 3 foot. And the reason why I've built an alternative board is because if I had a 2x2 with these 2 tanks on the board, it would just look really weird. So I've elongated it by a foot and narrowed it slightly, and that will just allow us to set the scene. Remember, these Setting the Scenes serve 2 purposes. The first one is purely if you're sat at home, you've had enough of painting, you've had enough of telly or whatever, you can disappear into the garage or wherever your hobby room is and set up a little scene and take some photos and post them on social media. So it's purely an opportunity for you to look at a different aspect of the hobby and take some really great photos with your phone or a digital camera or whatever you've got, and set the scene in which the battles are fought in 30k. The second is these, if you can imagine, this is a small slither of a battlefield, and you could quite easily replicate this into a full 6x4, 4x4, 8x6, whatever board you play on. So they're just to give you ideas more than anything else. So hopefully that will make sense. Now, first of all, you'll notice that the lip on here is quite deep. I've made it really deep purposely because of the way the channel builds boards, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, is we dump a ton of rocks and aggregate and all sorts of bits and bobs, and that creates an undulating battlefield, which takes up some depth. So I think I've got an inch, I'll double check. It's actually 1.5 inches, so what we're looking at about 4 centimeters. So it's 4 centimeters deep, and it's the same construction as before. I can tip it up ever so slightly. It's just a wooden base, wooden frame rather, screwed together, reinforcing strut down the middle, and then some MDF on top, and I've just covered it with this foam core stuff. It's really easy to get hold of. So that's the board. Composition wise, I think I'm going to have the Falchion kind of bursting through a fortified position with like a smashed hab block, and then the Venator is going to take up a defensive position behind the hab block, and then that will allow us to explore cover saves later on in Firefight and Back to School. But first we need to build the ground. There's a lot to build in this, so bear with me. Lots of elements to put together. The first one is we're going to create the built-up area where the hab block and the Venator are going to be placed. So to do that, I'm going to use a kitchen tile. Now these are fantastic. They're really good measurement wise, so they are exactly a foot wide, which fits perfectly into our box here. So there's no gap to either side. And this one I think is just shy of 2 foot. It's actually 23.5 inches. So you could easily buy a ton of these and floor your entire 6x4, which I do for the channel. And it looks really great because it just creates it creates a look as if the Mechanicum have come down in their big landers and they've melter blasted the surface nice and smooth so construction can begin. And these aren't perfectly flat like some of the tiles I've got. Because they're slate, they've got slight steps in them and irregular shapes throughout the tile. So they look really cool. I love these. Next, we're going to use my favourite piece of terrain, or one of my favourites, not to be forgotten by the container. Just these wall sections from Forge World. They're just going to create the illusion of a defensive position where the falchion has just ploughed on through, advancing into the built-up or city area. They do have a bit of a lip on, but we're not too worried about them. We're going to sort that out a bit later on. And they're just under 6 inches long. I think they're 5 and a bit. Yeah, 5 3/4 inches or 14.5 centimetres. So not quite 15 centimetres. And there is a slight gap here, but we're not too worried about it. If I push that way, I think that's better for you guys. So that's that. Really, really easy. We're going to put some Imperial Fists in here as if they're defending the onslaught of the Super Heavy. And then next, we're going to look at the Riser Pattern Ruins from Games Workshop. These are a fantastic set of scenery. I've got tons and tons and tons of these. Now, the only issue I had in the past is that I'm always conscious that when I put these down, there's no floor to them because they wouldn't be straight onto the bedrock. They'd have a metalled surface or a tiled surface or something of which the occupants would walk on. So to that end, I've made a floor. I've been talking about it for ages and I finally got around to doing it. Now I have done a step-by-step for this and I will do this very, very quickly and show you all the work in progress photos. So if we start off with stage 1, I offered up the 2 pieces of how I wanted them in orientation on a piece of 1mm plasticard. I then drew around the inside because I want the floor to be on the inside and not the outside, because I didn't want there to be a 1mm step between the floor surface and the bottom of the riser structure. So you can see there I've just drew around there with a biro, super easy. Then I cut it out. I just used a pair of Citadel clippers to do the length, and then I cut the middle bit out with a scalpel, and then just give it a really quick file. It's not super important to be really, really accurate for this. I then offered the 2 together to make sure it all fitted in, which it did perfectly. Now you'll notice that there is a square edge towards the foreground of the screen there. I wasn't worried about making it complete because that is going to be covered up, so we're not worried about that too much. So this is very much it took me 30 minutes. It was really quick. So that's that done. Next, I wanted a tiled effect. Now you can of course go to any hobby shop and buy pre-scored plasticard with tiles in various different sizes. I didn't have any in my hobby box, so I just had to make it really quickly, and they're just 1 centimetre squares, which I marked, drew in biro, and then I took a drill, a little pin vise rather, and the bit that's in that vise is a 2mm drill, and all I did was score the lines, and as you can see there, it worked really well and put a really great indentation and some texture into a very boring piece of foam plasticard. Geez, can't get my words out today. All right, and then next we offered it up, and that's the final position, and that's how it looks. Next, I moved on to painting, so really, really quick. Used a bit of Halford's Grey Primer to give it a coat. Then I based it in Rhinox Hide, and then I just took some Commedia Art White and just drew some random patches on there. This will make the Chol Slayer orange stand out a little bit more, which you can see in the next step here. It doesn't have to be beautiful or accurate, it just needs to be super rough. Next, I missed out a stage. What I did is I put some red in there, like a dark red as well, just in patches. And then I covered it with bolt gun metal essentially, but it was a Vallejo colour. So a dark metal. And then I airbrushed a lighter metal on top right in the centre just to give each tile a bit of highlight. And you can see there I attached the whole thing with a... before I painted it, I used a bit of double-sided duct tape onto a cup to secure the plasticard in place. Once I'd done the highlight, I then sprayed the entire floor section with AKE Interactive chipping medium. I gave it a couple of coats and allowed it to dry between each coat. I then went to the alternative weathering process. You can see in the small video here, essentially it's a high pressured, I don't know what to call it really, just a high pressured squirty watering can thing. I know that sounds really stupid, but just a high pressure bottle really with a nozzle, and it allows you to squirt water out in a wide fan really softly, or you can dial the little nozzle on the end and create a hard stream of water. And as you can see from that video there, I just dabbed I coated it in water first of all in a light spray, so it started to activate the chipping medium underneath, and then I put a couple of hard squirts, no pun intended, onto the surface there, and that's what created the chipping effect. And you know what? It's super random, and you can see all the different colours, the reds and the orange and the brown coming through there. So worked really, really well. Really happy with that. Then I gave it a very quick coat of Agrax Earthshade just all over. I gave it a couple of coats, and all we're trying to do is just dull down the highlights and just kind of blend all of those different colours together. I then went in with some weathering powders from Forge World. I think it was dark sand, I think it was, and I just randomly pushed that all over the entire floor surface. I then sprayed it with a coat of water, and then I just used a brush to agitate it. I got most of the powder off and just left a little bit of residue behind, and then allowed it to dry for about 40 minutes. You can use a hairdryer, of course, to speed that process up. And then that was it. That was the finished product. And as you can see there are all the paints, weathering powders, chipping mediums, and the varnish that I use. So super easy. I know that's quite a long process to get the final effect, but you know, I think it was worth it in the end, and I think when we take the photos at the end, you'll see the results of that. All right, so what we've got then, we've got our floor there, which is really great, and what we want to do is we want to give some cover to the Venator firing at the falchion there. So I'm just going to slot these in place. Excellent. Now orientation is a really big thing here. Now, a lot of people, when they build boards, myself included, when I put a building down, I orientate it so it's square to the board. It does work, it looks great, but sometimes it can look a bit boring. Sometimes you want buildings on an angle, and if you're so used to playing buildings that are square to the board, the outer edge of the board, and then you go and play on a board that, well, the buildings are off at an angle, it does throw your game, and it sounds completely ridiculous, but it's so true. And what I'd love to have done is we really wanted to angle this, but for me, it's not in line with the defence line here. And you're saying to me, well, why don't you just angle the defence line? Well, I can do, but it looks weird here and here. So for this particular piece, we're just going to do it straight. But if we were using a much bigger board, Big 64, I would absolutely angle all the buildings, so it'd be a bit easier. So I'm going to put it straight. I'm going to put it there like that, and then if we look at our Venator, we'll get some photos coming down this way later on, and you'll see the cover it will provide. So I'm quite happy with that. Composition-wise, that will work. Maybe back a little bit. Yeah, I think that's all right. Now we just need to make this a little bit more believable, because at the moment it doesn't look believable. And so we've got some smaller sections here from the building. And we're going to pop them like that. And then to close this corner off, to prove that it's been reinforced, we're going to put some of these barrels and sandbags here. It's got to lean over the front, make sure I'm getting it right. Now, I didn't put recesses in this leading edge here to accommodate for this bit here. The reason why I didn't do that was because I can't always guarantee how I'm going to build this, and we'll cover this up later with some stone and then the snow which will go on top. So what we've done here is I'll just make sure it goes to the edge, and you can see that it does rock backwards and forwards on the ledge, and that's what I didn't want of the back two sections. That's why I cut into the stanchions of the section here, but it's okay. And this section here is covered by the defence there, so that looks good to me. I like that. One thing I love about this set as well, it also comes with like a little mini escape hatch, so maybe in the depths of here there is a way for the occupants to go like into an underground bunker from their original building, which I really love. And we'll just pop that there, and again that just breaks up the floor surface, which is really cool. Now I have got some crates and bits and bobs, and I might just pop them here just to kind of reinforce this edge. I'm going to go again with green. I didn't want to go with many other colours because they'll clash a little bit, but I'm just going to use a couple of yellow pieces, and you can't really see them, so for the photos it'll look quite good. So I'm going to pop them in there. I can't quite see this, but I have built this earlier, so I roughly know what it looks like. Put them there. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to pull them off. I don't like them. I'm going to use my favourite piece. And we'll just bulk this middle section out. Can put it here, that would work also. And then when we put the Venator in place, but I think that clashes a bit too much. Could just leave it. But I do like these barrels, containers rather. So I'm going to pop that. There. That looks okay. I'm probably not going to bother with this now. Actually, now I've got that. Let's leave it. And then next, we're going to try and work out the area here for the falchion. So I've got a lot of these flat pieces of slate. They're really, really nice. And I'm just going to put these here to bridge the gap. There's if you guys can see from this camera here, there's quite a big gap under here. So I want to bridge that gap and give it a bit of gradation there, or gradient rather. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to cover this up in a bit. Got a nice big solid rock there. And I'm not even going to cover the entire. I could do, but I don't need to right now. It's just the first layer. It's really cool, and that now brings it up to the same level as the tile here. So we'll get rid of that handy colander. Next, now we're going to fill out the middle sections with lots of little pieces of slate, and that will just cover up all of the black of the boards, and that's really important, and that will come apparent a little bit later on, but it also makes the whole thing a bit more believable. Bearing in mind a lot of that will be covered by the falchion. And I'll be honest with you, if I was building this for the channel, I probably wouldn't put these bigger bits in. I would use something else, which I'm going to use in the next ball build video, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. But we're just filling in the gaps. Hopefully you can see this here. It does create some really lovely texture. Just a bit on here, just to help blend that in a bit. Yep. Just a tiny bit in there. Great. So what we've got here, one thing I really love is we've got this really rugged texture of the outside, I guess, or the other part of the battlefield, and it's seamlessly blended with the defense line, and then we go into a built-up area, which for me, and you'll notice for a lot of the boards that I build on the channel, it's all about that complementing texture. You've got a nice smooth surface, the built-up area, and the rough outside, rough barren ground, as it were. So that looks really cool. I mean, you know, if you're at home and you want an alternative battlefield, done. Absolutely finished. You know, this could easily now just go onto the channel and we'll film a game over it. Fantastic. But we are going to do some tundra, and the way the snow tundra of it, and the way we achieve that is with salt. Now, there's lots of do's and don'ts with this. It does create a very fine powder over the bottom of your models and over the terrain. And if you shake it around too much, you get this lovely salty air that makes your lips go dry. But there are a lot more plus sides than there are downsides. Have used sugar in the past, which works just as well. It's a little bit more reflective than salt. So when you film with the camera, the light bounces back off the salt or the sugar. Less so with salt, but more with sugar. But also as well, if you're in summer, and you've got ants crawling around outside, they will find themselves into your house. And if you put salt down on your, sugar on your board, then you are going to get an infestation. So salt is better and works really, really well. And also as well, salt is a lot finer, which works. Now, there are several ways to apply this. I have used a sieve in the past, which gives you really, really great thin coverage. It's fantastic. It's kind of sieve it all over. But I don't know where my fine sieve is. I've lost it in the move and everything else. So what I am going to use, this. Oh, now, it's a bit of a pain because it will go everywhere. So what I've got is I've got a little book here. And all we're going to do is we're going to try and, I need 3 hands for this. I'm going to try and stop it from spilling over the edge. There you go, so that works. Now you will need to build up quite a few layers with this. Do you know what? I'm just going to try it without the sieve for now. Oh yeah, look, that works just as well. That's fine. Now, you can put loads on and you can create snowdrifts. So the more you put on, the more it will build up. It's exactly like using the sand that we use all the time. So I'm gonna put a bit more in some places than others. You can see those larger sections now are getting covered, and we're going to cover the little lip that's on the front of these because we want to try and blend that in. So that's really good, and you can imagine with the snow falling, it would drive against the barriers and build up and heap up over the front of the barriers. So you've seen me do that in the last couple of videos with the black sand effect. I mean, that to me just looks instant snow tundra. It looks absolutely fantastic. And if we get this falchion in here, oh, it's such a beast. We're going to pop it there. Hopefully from this camera here you can see it, and that just works. I mean, that just looks so cool. But let's not neglect the rest of the battlefield. So I appreciate I'm going to cover the camera up, but if I don't, I'm just going to create so much mess. So all I'm doing is just gently, I mean, it's easy to clean up. I'll just use a Hoover later on, because with the salt, you know, a pot of salt like this from the supermarket costs, I think it's like less than £1. Depends where you go, I guess. And we're just literally, liberally just dumping it all over the, we're not going crazy. We just want the suggestion of snow, don't we? And now we're going to try and blend the lips of these in a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just trying to make an effort. Snow would build up a little bit more around the building, because the wind would drive it against the face of the, or the sides of the container, or the sides of the building, and it would collect a little bit more. So we can put a little bit more in here. I don't want to go too crazy. It would collect on the top, so make sure we cover all those surfaces. I think that is it. Can get your fingers in there and give it a, if you do that, I don't know if you can see from this camera here, but you start to see your fingers. So if you do get that, you can just sprinkle a bit more on, or if you've got an airbrush, even better, you can blow it into areas where you want it specifically. It works really well. I'm just going to reinforce this a tiny bit. Now, I know what you're saying, you know, the models would have snow on them, absolutely, but these are Dan Porter's models, they're not mine, and I don't want to put snow all over Dan's models. However, as long as you're really careful, the salt will be absolutely fine, but I don't want to do that with Dan's models. I think he'll be okay on the tracks. I don't think he'll mind too much. But over the top, probably not going to do that with his stuff. But all of my models have a really good coat of varnish on them. And sometimes when I've been doing this sort of thing with them, I just wash them off with a bit of water. Just get that squirty bottle and just over the top, let them air dry, and they're absolutely fine. You know, I don't put a lot of weathering powders on my models, so it won't kind of take the weathering powder off. However, if you have, probably don't do it. and they're absolutely fine as they are. But for that additional extra realism, just a tiny, tiny sprinkle of snow, over the top, and it would look great. Final thing, we've got some Imperial Fists. They are standing defiantly. I appreciate they're on a Mars base and not a snow base. But what we could do, I don't think Dan would mind too much. Oh, look at that. Good effort there. Just a gentle dipping in the sand, in the salt. Look at that. That is great. Might put a fist in here. You know, we typically find Imperial Fists defending walls. It's where we are right now in the Siege of Terra. The fists are rallying around the battlements, repelling the forces of Horus. There, done. That is absolutely done. So I really hope you can see the benefit. I know there's quite a lot of work involved, but you know, I did that really quick one yesterday for Adeptus Titanicus on my Instagram and Facebook stories and did a post about it. That one did take me 10 minutes. It was so quick. Admittedly, I had all the stuff to hand, you know, it was just in the other room, but you know, I just pulled stuff from different areas, put it down, took a stage by stage, and boom, it's finished. This took a little bit longer, of course, but there's obviously a lot going on in here. But I think you'll find that it does create a really, really interesting battlefield, and these techniques you could easily take into your normal games. That is it. That is it for setting the scene. Next, we're going to go into Firefight, where we're going to discuss about how the Venator can shut down such a powerful tank like a Falchion. And we're going to talk about cover saves in Back to School, so that this series will link nicely together. I really hope you found this interesting. Again, any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you'd like me to answer any questions or comments in the end of month review show, please let me know. And if you are doing some of this at home, please take some photos, stick them up on your social media, tag the channel in, and we'll have a good look at them together. I really hope this has inspired you to do something different and something lots and lots of fun. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.